Hello, and welcome to another Enerpac Distributor sales training. This sales training is a follow-up to the recent training on high tonnage cylinders, where those talking about those products and their features and benefits. This one is a follow-up because it's all about selling these tools and complementary products into the construction market. So our goal here is for you to walk away from this webinar with an understanding of the opportunities in this market and an idea of where to start when entering this little bit longer sales cycle. So to give you an idea of just a high-level overview of the features and benefits of the high tonnage cylinders, you can see here 4 families that were released to replace existing versions of Enerpac high tonnage cylinders. And at a really high level, a high tonnage cylinder to us is anything that's 50 tons or higher in capacity. So you can see here we have single and double acting cylinders that fit that range, as well as tall and shorter lock nut cylinders. And of course, a lock nut is a great way for you to mechanically hold a load, which is perfect for extended periods of time because it's a mechanical lock and does not rely on any hydraulic pressure to maintain the position of your object. But like I said, this webinar is really about selling into the construction market. So first, just give a definition of the actual construction market. What do we mean by that? And I think there's really 2 primary areas here. The first is bridge construction, right? So bridges are a great opportunity for hydraulics, and the construction of those bridges, whether that be a brand new bridge or a replacement bridge, is a great place to use these hydraulic tools. And really, you can think of it in 2 basic operations. Typically, these bridges are cast and in a factory or out in the field, and then moved into position where the bridge is going to ultimately reside. And to do that, lifting of the bridge deck itself, hydraulics is a perfect solution for that because it's very powerful, very controlled for these large objects, and can be precisely put these things into place. But another way of moving these bridges into position involves the sliding, right? So you may have to lift a bridge into place and then slide it into position laterally rather than coming up from the bottom, which is sometimes called the jack and slide method. And again, you use hydraulics to do this sliding motion, which is a little bit different cylinders, a little bit longer stroke than your lifting type cylinders. So it's going to be a little different solution, but again, a solution for hydraulics nonetheless. The second area, again involving bridges, because this is a huge market for hydraulic tools out there, is in the maintenance of bridges. And I'm confident anybody who is out there listening to this right now has an opportunity like this in their area. And it's just a matter of finding the right people and getting involved with those projects. Because there are just, frankly, a lot of bridges around, and naturally these bridges, regardless of their design, need regular maintenance. And one of the most common maintenance practices is the replacement of the bearings on these bridges. Between the girders and the pylons and the actual deck, there are bearings that are in place in order for the bridge to function correctly, and those bearings need to be replaced. So you can see here in some of the images, very short lock nut cylinders are being used to temporarily lift up the bridge deck while the old bearings are removed and new bearings are put into place. So again, really great opportunity for hydraulics, and there's not a lot of other options out there when you're talking about a lift in this capacity. So let's just leave that definition at that. I think bridges is probably the biggest opportunity for us out there, but certainly there are a lot of other applications for our hydraulic products. But let's just think in terms of bridges as we go through this webinar here. And here's another chart. So just to give you an idea of the actual sales cycle, if you've never really sold into these types of projects before, here's some information on the spending of U.S. state and local bridges, at least within the United States. But I'm confident that you're going to see a very similar cycle in areas of the world that have a sort of a freeze-thaw period here. So let's kind of dig into what we're seeing here. If we look over the last 3 years, we can see there's a very distinct pattern to the spending. It doesn't exactly turn off at any point in time, but there certainly are peaks and troughs here. And what you're really seeing here is that during the winter months here in the northern hemisphere, It gets very cold, and particularly the northernmost areas, construction and maintenance really slows down. And that's an ideal point for a lot of these end users to enter into a phase where they're doing a lot of planning. They're building up budgets. They're talking about what they have to accomplish in the next year, and what exact tools and other spending are they going to need to accomplish those projects. So naturally, this is a perfect time to approach those companies, right? Because you're never really going to have a great chance of upselling them to a better, more sophisticated system if they never really have it in their budget to begin with. So again, this is a perfect period to start approaching these companies and give them ideas on some of the new technologies that Enerpac has to offer and some of the value that you can add in working with them. And then naturally, as you go through the spring and summer and into the fall months here, that's when spending really peaks, right? So spending is peaking during that period, and so a lot of these resources of the end user are going towards project execution, and there's not a lot of necessarily budgeting that's going on. They're really focused on spending that money. So this is when you're really going to start realizing the sales. So it's almost an annual sort of sales cycle that you have to go through. But it can be very lucrative, right? If you're out there, some of these systems can cost tens of thousands of dollars, maybe over $50 or $60 or $70,000 a system. So it really is worth your time to go out there and start planting some seeds with these end users. And that's the big takeaway here. If you're viewing this in the fall or winter when this is presented, now is a great time to start selling these systems. Now we're kind of got to go through a bit of a step-by-step cycle here, talking about how do you actually go about doing this. If you're brand new to this, where do you even start? So we're going to walk you through and start with what you should be selling. And so what I encourage you to do is use two main pieces of literature that are available on Enerpac.com. The first on the left is our high tonnage cylinder brochure. It's our technical brochure. It looks very similar to some of our catalog pages. And then the other on the right-hand side here is what we call the future of precision lifting. It's even newer than the high tonnage cylinder brochure. And what it really is there to do is to help you navigate a lot of our pump and control options that you have out there, because they can get a little bit overwhelming in terms of the options and features that are there. So it's going to give you some context in how all these options play against each other and what the different points of value are there. So that's the key takeaway here. Leverage these two brochures. Make sure you have some printed copies. And these are going to help you guide your discussion and give you some great leave-behinds at your customer. So kind of digging in a little bit deeper into these brochures, we're not going to go into all the features and benefits. Again, you can find other webinars from us here that goes into these details. But essentially what you're going to find if you crack this open is the features and benefits of our Summit Edition. And the Summit Edition is basically all the features and benefits, all the improvements that we made to our high tonnage cylinders that are going to make these cylinders differentiated from anyone else in the market. Right, so this is really the value that the Enerpac designs are going to be giving to the end customers here, and that's critical for you to understand as you go in there and start to sell them. But this also goes a bit further. It talks about specifications, so the exact dimensions of these products, the capacity of them, the strokes. That's all going to be in this brochure as well as the final part number. So really, you want, after walking a customer through this brochure, you're going to want them to take away two things. The first is, these Enerpac cylinders really have valuable features, right? These are different than the competitors, and they are truly valuable improvements, and they are valuable to me. And the second is that they have a model that fits my application. Again, this gives you all the specs you need to see how it fits into their application and into their systems, so they can have confidence that we've got the right part for them. And always, keep in mind if there's some specific need that's required out there, we do custom versions of these products as well. So certainly don't walk away from any opportunities because the immediate answer is not obvious. Always approach our customs group, which is available through our territory managers. Secondly, we have the precision lifting brochure. And this doesn't quite get into all the technical details as the previous one did. But what it's going to do is give you a high-level view of our pump portfolio, everything from the simplest manual pump all the way up to our very sophisticated automatically controlled powered pumps. So it's going to give you some context there on how all those pumps are positioned and what they mean for the customer. It also is actually going to outline a valve that we've sort of reinvigorated in terms of marketing and driving more awareness, and that's called the Venturi valve. And the Venturi valve is a great option because it prevents cylinders from getting stuck. All right, and what I mean by that is, traditionally, if you're using anyone's pump or anyone's single-acting cylinder, you're relying on the weight of your load to return that single-acting cylinder back to its original position. But sometimes, depending on friction of the system and the loading of those cylinders, they might actually get stuck. The load might not be enough to return it back to its original position, or it might just move really slowly. So what the Venturi valve is going to do in both those situations is accelerate the retraction of those single-acting cylinders. So really, for the cost of that added feature, there's a lot of peace of mind that can go. So it's a great upsell for your customers, and really is a valuable option. And then finally, this brochure is going to go into the various features and benefits of those different options that we just walked through here. So the key takeaway that you want your end customer to be thinking as you walk them through this is that, I really should consider a safer, easier to operate pump instead of a manual system. And by a manual system, I mean controlling all the different lifting points with a needle valve and in a manifold. Certainly we'll sell them that option if that's what they want to ultimately go with, but there's just a lot of better options out there that we'll talk about here in a bit that will automatically synchronize and control those points. And it's, again, something I'm confident you can upsell your customers to, but it's critical to get that into their budget early so there's no budget challenges later on in the project. So if you look at the customers, right now it's okay, so you know what to sell. Who should I sell that to? And we kind of called out, at least here in the United States, 4 different types of companies that are out there. And within those companies, there's really 2 primary groups of stakeholders in the decision. So the people that you have to work with, all get them on the same page that you've got the best solution for them. So kind of walking through those companies, we've got a construction company that really goes out there, does planning and executes the work. We have a Department of Transportation. There's one of these in every single state or province, depending on where you are. And they do a lot of work in planning, a lot of bridge maintenance and new projects as well, and are another great opportunity for you to sell hydraulics. Railroad companies, very similar to the Department of Transportation's, they have a lot of bridges that are dedicated to rail. And just like road bridges, those need to be maintained and ultimately replaced. So railroad companies are also a great target. And then finally, Army Corps of Engineers. They get involved with some more specific projects, maybe a little bit more visible projects. But again, because their projects are a little bit more complex and require a little bit more precision and control, maybe a little bit more sophisticated systems, again, a great opportunity for hydraulic sales. So within those groups, I really split it out into 2 primary groups of stakeholders. And they're going to have a little bit different titles depending on what company you're talking with. But I think if you use this approach, you're going to be in a pretty good shape when you start these conversations. The first group is technical personnel, right? You have a lot of different engineering titles in there, and certainly they're involved with speccing out the right system that's going to work and prevent any damage to the assets that they're moving around. So they're a great primary stakeholder in this decision. But there's also project personnel there on the bottom, right? In a lot of these cases, there's someone like a project manager or an estimator that's involved in the decision. They're going to have their own incentives and their own objectives in these projects, and it's really important to understand how to sell these products to those individuals as well. So look for these titles as you start approaching these types of companies. Make sure you've got all the stakeholders at the table so that ultimately when you think you've got them sold, there's no surprises in terms of somebody else who needs to be convinced that you've got the right solution. So really that begs the question, right? You've got 2 different groups of stakeholders. How do you actually sell to them? What are the key messages? So I'll walk through this very quickly, but of course you can pause this recording and read these things verbatim. But I wanted to give you a playbook of the primary points of value when you're talking to these different people, right? And just as a salesperson goes through every meeting and listens to their customer about really what matters to them, to help you tailor your conversation and tailor your sales pitch to that individual. That's what this slide is all about, right? So technical personnel cares about, really in my mind, 4 primary things. The first is having greater control over their system. Right. And the second is having something that's durable. A lot of these projects are outdoors, so they need to have something that's going to stand up and function the way they expect it to, even though it's exposed to the elements. Third, we have limited operator error. This is a huge one for us because, frankly, you have people out there that are operating these products, doing these jobs that are very well trained, very experienced. But more and more, we're getting newer and newer people into these roles, and they're not as experienced and they're not as well trained. So if you can have people that are coming in that are less experienced, less trained, and still function in their job, that's a huge value for you to bring to that end customer. So having some of these synchronized systems is going to be great. And then fourth of all, we have safety. Everybody is aware, is incentivized at least somewhat in having something that's considered as a safe process and a safe set of tools. So there certainly are points there that we should be talking about in terms of these products here. So just to go through these real quickly, greater control. We have 2 pumps and control systems. One's called an split flow pump, or an SFP. The other is our Evo series of pumps. And their primary point here really is that they synchronize automatically the lifting points. Right? There's very limited room for operator error. But they automatically synchronize it, which means that you can really control every single lifting point without relying on any manual adjustments of valves here. It's all done via mechanical or electronic means. Second of all is that Venturi valve I mentioned earlier. It accelerates the retraction on single-acting cylinders and prevents them from getting stuck. Right? Again, very controlled. You want these tools to operate the way they're expected to. Second of all, we have durability. Right, and this goes back to that Sum Edition set of features for the high tonnage cylinders. Read through that brochure and understand what's going on there. But primarily, there's some nitrocarburization on the bodies and pistons that are going to make it a lot more durable than your standard high tonnage cylinder against any wear or corrosion out there, and particularly as you bring these things outdoors. Right, and so to complement that, we've improved it with advanced bearings and seals. To even, not only improve it from the wear and corrosion on the metal components, but also have these bearings and seals lasting a lot longer, even though there could be dirt, salt water, and other corrosive things getting in between the seals and the metal. So it's a great feature set there. And then finally, those bearings and seals are also going to help you resist side loads. And side loads happens when you're lifting an object and it's not quite centered on the load, right? It's just ever so slightly pushing down and to the side on that cylinder, which pushes that piston against the body and can lead to some damage in those cylinders if it becomes too extreme. But again, because of these advancements, these cylinders are gonna resist wear and tear in those types of situations and have them last even longer. Moving on to operator error, again, I touched on it earlier. The synchronization is automatic for these 2 series of pumps, so it's a great upsell and a great way for you to limit the operator error. And then finally, safety. It touches on the same points, right? When you have less opportunity for human error, that means that there's less opportunity for someone to get hurt, or less opportunity for someone to die, or damage any of the assets that you're moving around. So there's quite a few points here, and again, listen to your customer and figure out really, what are the key things driving them. The second group is the project personnel, right? The project personnel are very, very different, right? They're not really concerned about technically what's going to happen there. They're just worried about 2 things: their timeline and their budget, which are pretty much intertwined. But if you walk through these, it comes down to faster operation. Right, faster operation is going to allow you to execute your jobs a lot quicker. It's going to let you work within a tighter window, which can have a pretty big impact on a project, depending on how all the series of steps stack up. So being able to automatically synchronize with those 2 different pump solutions are going to make this go a lot faster, rather than manually adjusting a valve, stopping, checking each point, radioing back to the controller and going a little bit further, stopping, and doing that over and over and over again. Wouldn't it be nice if all of those points were just automatically synchronized and you could do your lift or your lowering with a lot more confidence? Second of all, the Venturi valve also plays into faster operation, right? It accelerates the retraction of those single-acting cylinders, which is going to prevent any stuck cylinders, but just accelerates things overall. The second point under timeline is fewer unplanned events. Very similar to faster operation, right? Here's all about avoiding things that you didn't foresee happening, right? So stuck cylinders are a problem. Venturi valve can help with that. Operator error can lead to issues, damage to the tools, damage to the assets, just work stoppage. If that's synchronized automatically, that's going to help you out quite a bit there. And then finally, corrosion resistance. That Summit edition of features on the high tonnage cylinders resist damage, which is going to give you a lot more confidence that they're going to function correctly when you need them to. And lastly, here we get to the budget, which not all that different, right? Fewer unplanned events. Exactly the same as what's typed up here above, because unplanned events also have an impact on money, not just your time, right? You're paying people for unplanned events. You have a lot of variable costs that all start stacking up if things don't go as they plan. And then finally, safety. Even if you really don't give a lick about anyone's safety, you have to admit that safety does have an impact on your pocketbook, which means that anybody who's getting injured or is unfortunately killed because of some negligence on the job site, that's going to have an impact to the budget as well. So there certainly is a budget element to that very unfortunate situation. So again, talk to your customers, see what they value. And that's kind of it. That's kind of the approach that we recommend that you take out there. And what I wanted to do here with the last slide is just give you some steps to go forward and here in the next 2 weeks, things that you can take action today and really get out there and start working these little bit longer sales cycles. First is obviously get familiar with the materials. Earlier I presented those 2 brochures that are available on Enerpac.com by those very exact names that I typed up there on the screen. And I'm even going to throw in here a third bonus set of materials. It's specifically talking about our tools that are used in bridge maintenance, because it's not just about lifting and lowering. There are actually several other applications that go into bridge maintenance. And if you look for this title here, Tools for Bridge Maintenance on Enerpac.com, you're going to find a flyer that looks just like this. And it's got a great little picture of a bridge. It highlights all the different points where some of these tools are being used, a lot of different applications. So another great leave behind that kind of shows that you understand what's going on in this business and that there's a lot of opportunity for you to bring some value to your end customers there. So once you get familiar with materials, identify those accounts, right? Go through that list of types of customers, figure out who your contacts are. And even if you don't have them, start doing a little bit of internet research and go dig. I would really recommend starting with your Department of Transportation. They're going to be a great place to start, great place to start reaching out and making some contacts, understand what's planned for your market in the next year or so. And then reach out, right? Reach out to those groups. And the great thing about reaching out right now is that you've got some great new products here to talk about from Enerpac. So tell them you got several new solutions and that you really want to request a meeting with them to talk about it. And then that meeting can take a form of a one-on-one meeting or even a lunch and learn, right? Many times there's many engineers in these firms that are engaged, and so getting them all together at once can be a great forum for you to start walking through some of these advantages and how it might help that customer specifically in some of the issues they're facing. So as you go out here, there are really just 3 things I want you to keep in mind, right? Remember that you have something really interesting and valuable to discuss. These are new solutions from Enerpac, and so likely your customers haven't seen this before. And so that should really make you feel good about going in there and presenting something that's brand new to them that really is valuable. Second of all, if you're not as familiar with the Enerpac brand, we're the premium and primary brand here in these markets. And so our brand name is going to get you in the door. They're not going to be surprised that Enerpac has something brand new. They're just going to want to know what that is, right? We've got a lot of experience in this market and a lot of support, which leads to my final bullet point here, which is if you're not entirely comfortable about going about this process, or you want some help just getting started, please reach out and leverage your territory manager. They're there to help you, find the contacts, and certainly to make some of these sales calls and start training can be a great asset to you. And again, I think it's a great move on your part, because this is a huge market, and there are certainly some big sales out there for you to get. So at this point, I want to thank you for joining us on this distributor sales training webinar, and please check out some of our other webinar recordings for even more information. Thank you.